Okay, get to the beach. We're at the beach. They should have boats like right over here. Hopefully they do. Sometimes they don't spawn. No.
How to make these shakes on CapCut. How to make these shakes on CapCut.
How the game of Dare turned into a hefting session and me creaming and eating out my own sister.
What?
Your family's darkest secret. A couple of weeks ago, I found out that my wife cheated on me 6 years ago. How the game of Dare turned into a hefting session and me creaming and eating out my own sister. What the flip? Something insane happened last week. Something. So while they had to share, my older sister Rachel and I were home alone. Our parents were out of town and it was a typical lazy afternoon. I was in my room trying out this crazy new app called Her Notifier, which could address photos. I was amusing myself with celebrity pictures and processing how my crushes would look like without clothes. Rachel, 2 years older than me, was in her room. She was always the playful type. But what happened that day was way beyond innocent play. She knocked on my door and walked in wearing a short bathrobe. I quickly minimized the app and looked at her. Hey, what's up? I asked casually. Hey, Mark, can I borrow your phone charger? She replied, sitting on my bed. Sure. It's over there. I pointed to my desk as she leaned over to grab the charger. Her robe slightly opened, revealing a hint of her curves. I couldn't help but steal a glance. She caught me and smirked. Like what you see, bro? I blushed and shrugged, trying to play it cool. But then she did something unexpected. Rachel let her robe hang open a little more as she sat cross-legged on my bed. She bit her lower lip and said, Mark, I'm really bored. Want to play a game? What kind of game? I asked, my voice barely audible. How about a dare game? I dare you to tell me your deepest fantasy. She giggled. What the flip? I hesitated, but then thought it was harmless. Okay. I sometimes fantasize about public stuff. I muttered. She grinned, her eyes twinkling. Interesting. Your turn to dare me. I dare you to show me a little more, I said boldly, carried away in the moment. Rachel didn't flinch. She let her robe fall open, revealing her breasts. My heart raced and I felt my face getting hot. Your turn for a dare, I whispered. My voice was husky. Tell me if you have any photos of me in a bikini on your phone. She smirked. Yeah, I have some. I tried to sound cool, but I was stumbling around like a boy. It seemed to electrocute her, and she became visibly even more excited than before. Then I dared her to touch herself, never believing she would actually do it. But then she did. How the game of Dare turned into a hefting session and me creaming and eating out my own sister. What the flip? Something insane happened last week. Something. So while they had to share, my older sister Rachel and I were home. What's your family's darkest secret? A couple of weeks ago, I found out that my wife cheated on me 6 years ago. The way I found out is that her sister told me after going to visit her to find out how the delivery of her first child was. She confessed to me that 6 years ago my wife told her that she slept drunk with her best friend. In her words, my wife was very sorry. At the time she told me I was with my son, and immediately after leaving her house, I went to take a paternity test with him, fearing the worst. A week later I got the results and my fears came true. My son was not mine, and for some reason, I began to see the boy differently, more as an acquaintance than a son. With proof in hand, I confronted my wife at night when the child was sleeping. She asked me who told me, and I simply told her that it was none of her business, although obviously, it would not take long to connect the dots that it was her sister. Well, that is not my problem now. Regardless of that, I asked her for a divorce, which is now in process. She was devastated. She swore to me more than once that nothing would happen with anyone again, and that she has been faithful to me in body and soul since then. I held back the urge to insult her to avoid complications during the divorce issue, not believing a word she said, mostly blaming the alcohol instead of taking the blame herself. After talking about it, she threatened me saying that she would demand full custody of the child. I was so annoyed at that moment that I told her, okay, I don't want anything to do with something that is not mine, that she keep the child and I'll keep the dogs. After my words, she tried to convince me to take care of the child with her, that I am his father. At that moment I exploded. I was so angry and I had held back so much the urge to scream that I just yelled at her to go and take her bastard with her. A week had passed since then, and she went to her parents' house with her kid. She has not called me since then. She left with everything and the half-asleep kid when I yelled at her, especially since it was the first time I really yelled at her. It sure affected her. I talked to my parents and my dad told me that I did the right thing and that I shouldn't be raising something that is not of my blood. I agree with him. However, the pain is still there. I am currently seeing a therapist 3 times a week, who told me that I have already taken the first step, which was to leave behind what causes me pain. It just hurts to know that my family no longer exists. Regarding why my sister-in-law told me everything, according to her, she felt guilty seeing me always happy with my son, knowing that he may not be mine and that the fact that we went to visit her in a moment of weakness caused her to completely break down with guilt. I don't know how true that is. I just know that right now I feel tremendous hatred for my wife and a feeling of pain and resentment for the child, although it's just time to get ahead. My therapist recommended that I not see him or her and that regardless of the child's feelings, I should focus on my own first. That the child is no longer my problem and the sooner I accept it, the better. Not even 3 days later my ex came to my house and asked to come in. I went out and met her at the door. I told her that she was not going to set foot in my house while I was here, and if she was going to say anything, let it be at the door. She practically, what's your family's darkest secret? She practically begged me to take her son back, that if I wanted to cut off all contact with her, that's fine, that she deserves it, but that she can't raise a child alone, that she has a job and raising him alone is going to destroy her dream of being a notary. I tried to explain to her in the calmest way I could that my therapist was the one who recommended I cut off all contact with the 2 of them, and to please leave my door before I lost my mind. I love the child, but I don't want to take out my anger on an innocent, even less considering that this innocent child is the product of her inability to keep her legs closed. The child deserves better and she is currently responsible for giving it to him. I don't know how, but that's not my problem anymore. After that we talked a little more. She resisted the urge to try to cry and make a scene because, once again, we were on the street and she is someone who always took into account what people said about her. The last thing she asked me was to at least let her see the dogs. I told her no, that the best thing is for them to get used to her absence. Seeing her again after so much time will only make them euphoric. After that she just nodded and left. 2 days after that she called me when she received the divorce papers. My mistake was answering the phone because immediately after about 30 minutes she was yelling, to which I later managed to say that the papers must have the number of my civil lawyer, so she can call her if she has any questions. After that I silenced her number. She has not come to my house since then nor tried to call again. That same day I contacted a friend that I made during my master's degree and I told her to go out. She accepted it well. We've been going out since then. Finally last Friday I told her to be an exclusive couple and she accepted. She has slept at my house for a few days, and she already knows my dogs and adores them, which I appreciate because I couldn't start something with someone who doesn't accept my pets. Started from the bottom, now we're here. She practically begged me to take her son back, that if I wanted to cut off all contact with her, that's fine, that she deserves it, but that she can't raise a child alone, that she has a job and raising him alone is going to destroy her dream of being a notary. I tried to explain to her in the calmest way I could that my therapist was the one who recommended I cut off all contact with the 2 of them, and to please leave my door before I lost my mind. I love the child, but I don't want to take out my anger on an innocent, even less considering that this innocent child is the product of her inability to keep her legs closed. The child deserves better and she is currently responsible for giving it to him. I don't know how, but that's not my problem anymore. After that we talked a little more. She resisted the urge to try to cry and make a scene because, once again, we were on the street and she is someone who always took into account what people said about her. What? Called my daughter's boyfriend's son. I'll never forget his reaction. My daughter has been dating James for 2 years now. Before meeting him, my daughter strictly told me not to mention his dad or any family members to him as he is not close with them. I didn't ask what happened because it was not my place to know. Genuinely, I liked him a lot. He is a good man, responsible, neat, and truly loves my daughter. We bonded well. I only met him a handful of times. A few days ago, my daughter came to visit me along with James.
What is the most tragic announcement that was made at your high school? The most horrible form of announcement happened in class unintentionally. The teacher hadn't arrived yet, and everyone was seated but chatting. I heard a group to my left talking about a boy at a nearby school who had taken his own life the night before. A blonde boy, 2 years younger. They started talking about his sister, our age, and I remember the most horrible sensation like a rising sickness, creeping all over me. They shared the gory details in hushed whispers, horrified, yet loving the gruesome darkness of it all. How he'd waited till he was alone, and done it in the garage. What he looked like, when they cut him down. I felt my heart, beating so hard that I felt sick, so sick I wanted to vomit on my desk, but I couldn't move. All I could do was listen. The girl in front of me suddenly turned around and I still remember her face, white as a ghost. She said my name, and then, no. Oh no. The group gossiping said my cousin's name just as the teacher entered. I felt like a ghost, suspended in that horrible second where I heard his name and I couldn't pretend. My mind didn't work. The girl in front of me kept turning to ask if I was okay, but I couldn't look at her. The teacher hated me, and I couldn't ask to leave, because I couldn't explain. For 40 minutes I sat there, and everyone's voices felt like they were in a wind tunnel. All I could really hear was my breathing, hard and fast. Dead, dead, dead. I was stuck. The moment class ended, I bolted, leaving books in my bag, walking straight to the office. There wasn't any air. It felt like I was crossing a desert. The school was deserted. Everyone was in class. It made the moment more surreal, like being inside a dream. My dad was home that day, and all I could think was that I needed to reach my dad. The world had shrunk to a single mission. Please ring my dad. I need to go home, I told the office staff through the window. They kept talking to me, but I couldn't understand their words. Please ring my dad. I need to go home, I said these words over and over. Finally, one asked if I was sick. I felt sick with the relief that I now had an excuse. Yes, I am sick. I went and sat in a chair, no longer able to stand. The office ladies asked how I was sick, and what was wrong, but I was unable to tell them. I was caught, unable to explain, but unable to leave. And in my mind, all the time, he was swinging. Luckily, at this point my year coordinator came running in. What is the most tragic announcement that was made at your high school? The most horrible form of announcement happened in class unintentionally. The teacher hadn't arrived yet, and everyone was seated but chatting. I heard a group to my left talking about a boy at a nearby school who had taken his own life the night before. A blonde boy, 2 years. Turns out the girl in my class had run straight to his office to tell him what happened. He made the office ladies bring my dad, and held my hand while I waited. I remember that he had tears in his eyes. I was always so grateful that he was there, as a buffer, but I couldn't speak because I couldn't understand his words. I remember that his voice kept breaking. I'd never heard him sound anything but confident. I kept thinking about the road, swinging. About how we'd spent so many years there, playing. And he went there to end himself. Our house was so close, but he did that. The office was so still. The office ladies were staring at me as if I was the one now passing. I remember clenching my hands in the pockets of my jeans. How my head felt like there was no blood in it. I thought about my other cousin, her parents, and then I couldn't think about them, because he wasn't alive. And I was sitting there, just waiting. We didn't live far from school, so my dad arrived soon. There were no words for the relief of seeing his gentle face. He asked if I was sick, and I simply told him I had to go home. Everyone was silent, watching us leave. I got in the car. Instead of starting the vehicle, my dad turned to me and said, "Please tell me what's wrong." And in that moment, I suddenly realized I was going to have to tell him about the ending. In his entire window of time, this thought had not occurred to me.
Wow, the tissue?
Out loud,
It's
but destroying
not
another person like I had been
tissue.
destroyed.
Well, what is it?
Much worse than learning the truth.
It's the
I wanted to get out of the
bubble
car,
wrap.
but there was
Oh.
nowhere else to go. I had nowhere to run, and I couldn't move anyway. And then I realized that it would
They're
end,
really
that
tiny,
we would have to
tiny
tell my brother,
bubbles.
who was homesick, and then my mother. And I did not want to do it. I did not want to start that chain, so I sat there, frozen and lost, surrounded by a death that
Can
was
I
still a
play
secret.
the game
I
with
remember
you?
my dad's worry turning to a different kind of alarm.